All right, today we are diving into a really provocative argument that's been making the rounds online. It basically claims that some of America's core institutions, we're talking the press, the government, aren't just failing us, but that they're actually fundamentally broken by design. So here's how we're going to walk through this viewpoint. First, we'll look at a serious accusation of media censorship. Then we'll shift to this just staggering claim of financial fraud in California. After that, we'll see how a specific criminal case gets tied into national security policy. And finally, we'll look at the really radical solutions being proposed to fix all of it. Okay, so the whole argument kicks off with a really pointed accusation against the international press, and it's all built around a first-hand account from a former Associated Press staffer who was on the ground covering the conflict in Gaza. I mean, this is a really powerful claim. It's not just saying an outside group tried to censor them. It's alleging self-censorship, that the news organization gave in to a threat, and then that management made the decision to not even tell the public that it happened. So, the source lays out exactly how this supposedly went down back in 2008. It starts with a critical detail in a story that Hamas fighters were dressed as civilians. Then, a threat comes in. The reporter asks for the detail to be pulled, and the editor agrees, but then denies the request to add a note explaining why it was pulled. This one specific event is then used as a launchpad for a much, much bigger argument. So the crucial point here, according to the source, is that this wasn't just a one-off thing. It's alleging that this is part of a long-term pattern, that the press, by using data from Hamas-run sources and local reporters who are either on board, scared, or actual members, well, it effectively becomes an amplifier for propaganda, and that this completely distorts the reality of what's happening for everyone watching around the world. From the integrity of the media, the argument takes a sharp pivot right into state government. The source shines a spotlight on a report that alleges a level of financial fraud in California that is, well, it's almost hard to believe. And there it is. That's the headline number. The central claim is that under the Newsom administration, the state of California lost at least $180 billion to fraud. Now, to help you wrap your head around a number that big, the source points out that $180 billion is more than the entire yearly economic output of 141 different countries. It's a figure so massive, it's almost abstract. Now, as you'd probably expect, the state government pushes back hard. Governor Newsom's office called the report nothing more than guesses and said that California is actually a leader in fighting fraud. But the report's author is doubling down, calling it the largest financial crime in American history, and claiming it was basically enabled by the state itself. So where is all this money supposedly coming from? Well, the report breaks it down. It claims that fraud in Medi-Cal, which is the state's big healthcare program, could be as high as $50 billion a year all by itself. The rest is made up from other state programs like unemployment insurance. But here's where the source commentary takes it a huge step further. This isn't just about mismanagement or incompetence anymore. It's an allegation that this is all happening on purpose. The argument is that the whole system is basically running on an honor system with intentionally weak oversight so that these funds can be directed to certain groups to push a political agenda. Okay, so we've gone from state finances, and now the narrative blows up to the federal level with a focus on national security. The source takes a recent criminal case and uses it to make a big argument about a cornerstone of American law, birthright citizenship. The incident here is an FBI indictment of a brother and sister. They're connected to an alleged plot to set off a bomb at a major U.S. military base, MacDill Air Force Base, which is actually the headquarters for U.S. Central Command. And this is really the core of the source's argument on this topic. It makes a point to highlight that the suspects are only U.S. citizens because they were born on U.S. soil to parents who weren't citizens. So their alleged crime isn't presented as just an isolated event. It's framed as a direct and maybe even predictable result of what the source sees as a flawed immigration policy. So by tying this one specific crime back to the 14th Amendment, the source completely reframes the whole debate. What has long been a constitutional principle about civil rights and immigration is presented here as an active, ongoing threat to national security. So, after laying out these huge, perceived crises in the media, the government, and national policy, what's the solution? Well, the commentary gets into that, and the proposals it offers are every bit as drastic as the problems it describes. So you really have to hear the severity of these proposed responses. For journalists accused of pushing propaganda and for people committing this massive fraud, the source calls for capital punishment. And for birthright citizenship, it suggests that if the Supreme Court doesn't strike it down, the president should just ignore the ruling. I mean, that's a direct challenge to the entire separation of powers. And that really brings us to the heart of this entire analysis. All these claims we've looked at about media bias, government corruption, national security, they all point to this one central theme: a deep, profound loss of faith in our foundational institutions. And that leaves all of us with a pretty critical question to think about. When that trust is gone, what comes next?